Morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 7th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the October 10th, 2024 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes is hereby opened. All right, Karen made the motion to approve the minutes, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Good morning, Chair, Commission. Cassie Hayes, current planner. Item number 2 before you is your first variance request. This is a request to reduce the front yard setback from 25 feet to 14 feet, reduce the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 6 feet, and increase the maximum lot coverage from 30% to 33% in order to construct a single-family residence on this property. This property is located at the corner of Van Buren Street and Gold Street, currently zoned medium-density residential district. It does also lie within the M Hill Overlay zoning district. Future land use of this property is urban neighborhood. And access to this property is off Van Buren Street currently, which is classified as a local street. What the applicant is proposing here is to construct a 70-foot wide or 70-foot long by 30-foot wide single-family residence on this property. This property previously was developed with a single-family residence that was built sometime in likely the 30s or the 40s and was demolished in 2018. The applicant has since purchased the property and would like to redevelop it. What he is proposing is a single-family residence with an attached garage. As this property is 50 feet wide by 130 foot long, that width of the property does substantially limit the buildable area that is available on this property. And with it being zoned medium density residential district, the maximum lot coverage is 30% per the code. And it is located within that M Hill Overlay District. So rather than having a regular 20-foot setback off a local street like is required in the medium density residential district, the M Hill Overlay District is a little bit more strict and requires a 25-foot front yard setback. So that's why you see that reduction from 25 feet to 14 feet instead of 20 feet to 14 feet. It is a corner lot, like I said, that abuts Van Buren Street to the south and Gold Street to the west. Van Buren Street does currently dead end at this property. It is not developed all the way through, and the surrounding properties to the north, east, and south are all currently undeveloped. It is located within a neighborhood that was largely developed in the 30s and 40s, so as a result, there are several legal non-conforming properties with regard to setback and lot coverage in this neighborhood. So what he is requesting does not appear to be outside of what would be character for the neighborhood. He is also proposing to, as you can see on, these are elevations of what the house will look like. And as you can see there in that left elevation on the bottom of the screen, he is proposing to provide a side loading garage on this property. The reason for that being to preclude vehicles from overhanging the sidewalk or extending into the right-of-way, and make his driveway a little bit longer to allow for that 20-foot of parking area in front of the garage doors. There are also several mature trees on this property that he is going to maintain in order to provide a privacy buffer and retain that established character of the neighborhood. The footprint of this proposed dwelling, like I said, 70 feet long by 30 feet wide. The footprint is 2,100 square feet. In total, this is a two-story structure, so in total it will be 4,200 square feet between the two stories. You can see up here on the screen, this is the main floor plan showing the garage, a living area, a bedroom, and a kitchen on the main floor. Here's the second floor plan. That does show 2 additional bedrooms on the second floor and then a game room. This middle area here is like a mezzanine type area. It is open to the floor below, so that area is not livable space. So when we were looking at this, we were looking at this from the aspect of both the setbacks and the lot coverage. So with regard to setbacks, we do recognize that because of the width of this lot, it will require some setback variances to some extent. The lot coverage, however, that previous dwelling that was on there was about 1,000 square feet in size, so it is possible for a residence of a similar size to be built on that property and allow for reasonable use and still be in harmony with the neighborhood. He could reduce the size of this dwelling in order to reduce the variances that are necessary and meet that maximum lot coverage requirement. So here is a picture of the property. This is the current access to the property looking straight at it from Van Buren Street. You can see those large mature trees there. This is looking a little bit further east. You're still seeing the approach. Here again, a little bit further east, you can see that it does kind of go into a little bit of a drainage there on the south. This is looking northwest at Gold Street, so there is an existing fence that runs along Gold Street. Right here, you can see it. Gold Street also is currently just a gravel, more so alleyway. Here's another picture of the north side of the property. This is looking across Van Buren Street to the south. This is Van Buren Street looking west. This is the neighbor directly across Gold Street. Gold Street lies right here. And this is Gold Street looking directly north. Like I said, gravel surfacing, more so just an alleyway access. And this is Van Buren Street looking east. As you can see, it dead ends right there. Past that is largely just a drainage area. So staff is putting this forward with no recommendation. We kind of wrestled with this one a little bit. So staff is putting this forward to you to determine if this variance request is appropriate in this location. If you were to decide to approve this request, the criteria for approval would be that the subject property is a corner lot that abuts to street with undeveloped properties to the north and east, and the size and configuration of the corner lot does provide a significantly limited building area. A single-family dwelling is a permitted use in the medium-density residential district. There are legal non-conforming properties in the neighborhood with setbacks and densities that do not meet the requirements of the current code, and the applicant will construct the single-family dwelling with a side-loading garage and maintain the mature trees that are on the property. If you do decide to deny this request, the criteria for denial would be that the subject property consists of about 6,500 square feet of land currently void of structural development. It is reasonable for them to reconfigure the dwelling to reduce the necessary variances. And they are proposing to construct a 2-story single-family dwelling with a 2,100 square foot footprint and total square footage of 4,200 square feet. So they could reduce the size of that dwelling to meet the maximum lot coverage and reduce the necessary variances. So again, staff is putting this forward to you to determine if it's appropriate or not. I will stand for any questions. The applicant is also here wishing to speak as well.
Could I just chime in with could you explain the stipulation on or proposed stipulation on the garage door in relation to these pictures? I thought I understood it, but then I find myself not oriented correctly.
Yep, so the stipulation that we put in there is requiring that the building permit be submitted with a side loading garage door. So the way that that would orient on the property is, let me get back to this picture that looks directly at it. So the house, looking at this picture directly, the driveway would come up this way and enter into a garage here. So the driveway would essentially go up, curve, and enter into the driveway from the west side.
So the garage door would face Gold Street,
Yes.
but not be loaded from Gold Street.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicky?
if I might, we certainly do recognize that this lot configuration with the 2 street frontages, in order to put a reasonable sized home on the property, variances are going to be needed, and we're in full support of that. I think when we bring these forward and we have to answer the question, is this the minimum adjustment necessary? We really struggle with that when the size of the structure is over 4,000 square feet. You've had similar requests before you in the past. I will remind you of one that you had to review over close to the School of Mines. It was an existing lot. Again, it was a corner lot, and trying to ensure that there would be reasonable reuse of that property while maintaining minimum setbacks, but then determining what should that footprint of that home be. And we struggled with it. We wanted the applicant to have an opportunity to visit with you today, and then depending upon what you determine, we would have to work through what those actual setback numbers would be.
Thank you. We do have a speaker request from Jeff Bosick. If you'd like to come up and address the commission.
Jose, you wanna have her too?
Yeah, if both of you want to come up, you're welcome to.
Come on up here. This is your place. You know what you're talking about. What is the probability of being able to build this house as is right now? The size that we have proposed, is that possible?
You know, we can't really get into a discussion on this. I guess we'd like to.
You're just gonna
hear
take
your-
all this information today and then
Yeah, we're
review
taking
it, and
information,
then-
reviewing, and voting based
Okay.
on that.
I guess until we get that, I guess there is nothing really I need to put forth then, I guess.
Okay.
Until that discussion needs to happen, I guess.
Okay. There may well be questions regarding this for you from the
Okay.
commission. I just don't know them yet.
I just want to be on file to speak in case we needed to, but
Yeah, you
if
bet.
this is just information gathering, you're going to come up with a decision, then we'll have to take the discussion after that, I guess.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
We'll call you back up if we
All
need
right.
some help. All right, commissioners. Mike Quasney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't see, I guess I might have missed it. Is there a picture that shows how this lays out on the property? To the, I'm assuming to the east of it, that's the smaller area. Is there anything going to be to the east of it? Is there property that can be developed? I'm kind of familiar with this area, but
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicky.
So I think that Cassie did a good job showing in her pictures that that's undeveloped at this time, but it could be developed in the future.
isn't there a drainage ditch right there or something to that effect?
I'll defer to Todd.
Todd, I gotta get you called up here.
Yeah, that's correct. There is a drainage ditch on the east side with right-of-way on the east side of the property as well.
Okay, so the ability for them to build anything to the east of that is not there.
Further east along Nickel Street, there's vacant property, but that's a little ways away to the east.
Yeah, that's where the construction trailer is.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, I'm familiar with this area quite a bit because I lived in that area across the interstate. And so I've seen a lot of the people who live in that area and had friends that lived there years ago. And there's a lot of small houses up there. There's a lot of different sizes, and it's an older neighborhood. And I'm pleased to see that there's going to be somebody coming in and putting something new up there, because I think that's what it needs. That whole area needs that. And I think that's part of the M Hill overlay that we talked about, was to try to redevelop that area if we could. This is a unique piece of property. It's got a lot of trees around it. It's kind of set aside. It doesn't look like you're in an urban area. And I think the setbacks, and to me, it's a large thing that we're going to do, is setbacks. I mean, you're taking 25 feet back to 14. That's quite a bit, but there's no other way that I can see that you can build this piece of property without doing something like that. I agree with Vicki. There's got to be some changes. I guess the struggle that you're having is this appropriate? Can they make it the house smaller? And I guess for me, I think if we can have the house this size, have it snuggled up there where nobody's going to go driving by, nobody's going to really build around it, at least not for years. And as long as they don't start putting sheds on there and making it more crowded, I don't see a problem with the size of the house as it is, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's just my comments.
All right. Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is has to do with the east parcel there. It looks like that's a right-of-way. So I was going to ask if that was a wetland, but I guess if it's a right-of-way, it doesn't really matter. So that kind of makes my question moot. I would add that, as we're developing our city, we've used all the good land, right? So we're down to the steep stuff and the instances like these that we have some challenges with. And I'm gonna actually kind of change my mind after hearing what Karen said. I think she's got a good point about snuggling it up in the trees and the fact that this is an option that somebody could live, and it's an unusable lot, and now it will be used for somebody's residence. So I think I'm going to support this. So that's my comment. And my question, I don't think is relevant on the wetland. So I'm going to stop talking.
All right. Alicia?
Thank you. I have a question as to why the setback. So I see that the setback on the north and the south looks like it's 25 feet, and they chose to lower it to 14 on the south and 6 on the north. So the north is a developable lot, but it's vacant at the moment. I wonder, for that person having such a tall building with a 70 feet, just a large, it seems like a bit larger than the other neighbors, if it might make sense, or wondering the reasoning why it's only 6 feet from the developable lot and then 14 feet from the street that dead ends. That might help with scale if it was a little farther from a future build.
Mr.
Vicki?
Chair, could you go to the aerial again, Cassie? So typically when someone comes in and they're trying to locate a structure and they're struggling with setbacks, the one that we want preserved the most is the setback to the right-of-way. In such case as if Van Buren should ever be extended to the east and connect with the right-of-way that would have to be built to the east of this lot, then that setback would have more significance. if you flip it around, they could say that Gold Street is their front setback. And, because you can pick whatever lot you want as your front, you don't have to take access from it. And then the north lot line would be the side, and that would only be 8 foot. So the 6 foot seemed like more of a compromise with that. At the end of the day, we've kind of got a blank slate where there's a lot of undeveloped property around it. And where does it best fit so that in years to come, and this house should stand for a long time, if road connections are made, what would have the minimal input? And I think Cassie's done a good job working with the applicant to try to get it located where it would have minimal impact.
That makes sense. And do we have an elevation of what would face north towards the future neighbor? I can't tell if the elevation that's labeled front elevation, what cardinal direction that faces.
So the one that's labeled front elevation here, this would be the one that faces south toward
okay.
Van Buren. And this rear elevation, that would be what faces
The
north.
potential neighbor. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Karen. I think a 2,100 square foot footprint on a 6,000 lot makes sense. If you look at the numbers, a 3% increase. If it was beyond that, it might have some reservations, but it's a minimal increase to the max. I think this is an appropriate use for this lot, so I would recommendation to approve it. Do I have to name all the stipulations that are attached to this one by one?
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
I think if you just said to approve as per staff's notation, you do need to cite a criteria, and may I just suggest that the fact that there is right-of-way on 3 sides creates a unique situation.
Sure. So I'd recommend approval of this with the staff's recommendations, considering the right-of-way on 3 sides. All details in their proposal should be adhered to. I make a motion to approve.
All right, is there a second to Kelly's motion? Vince seconded Kelly. Hang on 1 second. I just want to get the motion on record, and then I can call you up. So Kelly made the motion to approve. Vince seconded that motion. And now we'll go to discussion on the motion. Sir, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, identify yourself once you're up.
Yeah, I'm Rex Peregrine, and I own the property that's north of there. I'm just worried, especially that I see it's a 2-story building, that it would infringe on my property a little bit more. If it was a single story, because it sits on a hill anyway, it's already depressed to the north. So 6 feet, that's not much. So I just asked to consider, I guess 2-story, that's a big house for that neighborhood. So I just wanted to state that. I do own the property to the north, 6 feet, and that would be like, boom, there it is.
Yeah.
I guess so. I have a little concern.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Vince? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask him what lot to the north of this property is his?
Direct to the north or further? Okay.
So the one immediately north of it?
Yep.
And, sir, could you please come back to the microphone? So
Sorry.
I'm glad you're here, and thank you for bringing this up. What I'm trying to do is clarify your position on this. And that is, so are you telling me that your property is higher or lower than this property to the south of you?
Oh, lower.
Your property is lower. Okay. All right, sir, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
when the gentleman that just spoke should develop on that lot, the lot line between them will be a side yard for him. So he would need to be 8 foot 1 story, 12 foot 2 story. So if this is set back 6 feet, and then his structure sets back either 8, which would put a 12-foot separation between structures, or if it's 2-story, 12, then that would put an 18-foot separation between structures. I think if we defer to the fire department, maybe Chip could chime in to see if that meets separation requirements.
Yeah, Chip, your thoughts?
Morning. The ordinance is 8 feet setback requirement for the rear lot, and like Vicky would say, there is a concern with the separation distances between structures. And, you know, if they would choose to maybe work with the building official and myself on different sidings or requirements for non-combustible materials on the structure, we would support that, because it is a tough lot. These are tough lots up there, and with the 8 feet setback. Years ago, the setback was 5 feet, and when this first came in, they wanted 2 feet, and we kind of worked with the applicant and settled with the 6 foot. So, does that answer your question?
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
If I might ask a question directly to Chip, would the separation of 6 and 8, 14 feet, that would be the minimum separation between structures if the gentleman to the north should build, would that meet separation requirements for structural separation?
Oh, sorry, gotta get you back.
Thanks for clarifying that, Vicky. 14 feet between structures would be sufficient for the fire department separation for the 2 structures.
Thanks, Mike.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicky.
I believe on that north lot line there is a row of trees. Maybe the applicant could identify whether or not it's his intent to preserve those trees. I think it might help the neighbor to the north if they had that visual buffer.
Yeah, those trees gonna stay over there. I don't gonna touch.
Okay.
So, like I hear my neighbors, like he said, my land is a little higher. It's because before they have a house over there, so they fill it up. Because all of that land is coming like this. I think if somebody gonna build something, have to fill it up. Otherwise, water going to the house.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
If the motion maker would desire, there could be an added stipulation that the tree line along the north lot line remain as a part of granting this variance.
Well, those trees are actually on my lot.
Rex,
Thank you, sir.
I'm just gonna ask if you gotta chime in. We gotta ask you to come up. We need to keep our minutes, right?
No, those trees my land.
Well, those trees to the north on the picture, especially the bigger ones, are actually on my lot. So
Okay.
there's pretty much not a tree in between. All those trees that are to the north of that lot are on my property. So that thing would just be boom right in my face, especially with the 2 stories. And I respect the right to build on your property. I would hate to, but I don't know, what is the usual they're asking for 6 feet, what is it now?
Depending on how the lot's oriented, whether it's side or rear yard, but I think 8 foot is the
Oh, it
side
is.
yard,
12
right?
foot for 2-story.
12 foot for 2-story. Okay. And I'm just gonna ask this while we're talking. So we have a proposed 6 and then a 14. If we went to 8 on the Van Buren side and 12 on the other side, does that start getting into taking down trees on the Van Buren side? Is that why we're where we are?
Mr. Chair, I believe that the intent to push it back from Van Buren wasn't necessarily because of the tree locations. It's just if that street should ever be extended to the east and connected with, is it Nicholson or Nicholson? Which is just a paper street right now, meaning it's not improved, then we would preserve that right-of-way. When that should happen, there's no indication that that street connection would come forward in any timely manner. But that was the intent for why it was, the front yard setback was preserved from Van Buren Street in lieu of Gold Street.
And I apologize, I'm on a kick with questions, but where those contractor trailers are for the I-190 job, there's appeared to be 2 lots there. If those lots were to be developed, where would they likely take their access from? Would that Nickel Street be built
I
for
think they're
that?
city lots,
or-
aren't they? I guess I just have one question. They want 6 feet, as a rule or law right now, it's 8?
It'd be 12 for a 2-story structure.
12?
Or 8 for a 1-story.
Okay. I would just ask to consider that then. I mean, I guess 2 feet isn't much, but
And I think
just the
that's-
2-story, just because it's like, it is a lower thing. So it would,
That's what we'd, I'm
Just
gonna tell
consider
you,
that.
that's what we're considering currently.
Okay.
We're not voting on the motion yet,
Oh, yeah.
because there's,
Okay, yeah, just-
everybody's trying to work that part out right now.
yeah, I just want to say it also. I mean, it's tough. I'm sure, being a property owner and having to come in to fight for what you want to do stinks, but
Mr. Chair.
I understand that I would like to have, follow the law, I guess.
Thank you. Vicky?
So now you know how we struggled with this one. And I really want to appreciate the neighbor that showed up, because we do want to take into account the impact and to make the argument this is the minimal adjustment necessary. And so what I'm hearing, and thank you so much for your last comments, if we were to adjust this where we reduced that setback or increased the setback to the north lot line from 6 foot to 8 foot, that would mean we would have to reduce the setback to Van Buren from 14 feet to 12 feet. That might be a good compromise to let this property owner build the home that he desires, but still preserve future development on the property to the north.
I got a bunch of commissioners here. I'm going to let them chime in. Mike Quasney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you put up the picture where it shows the structure? You have it, it's like towards the back of the Gold Street entrance, correct? Right, so that last one. Now, if they're going to build to the north, I would guess what they're going to do is they're going to go off of Gold Street, and so it'd be towards the front of the structure that they would build, which would open up the backyard, which would make that wall effect a little less, is what I'm thinking. And we're not into the design, and I know we don't want to get into the design. I understand that. I'm just thinking that the way that the future would build out, it would almost, that would be towards their backyard, the back of that house, I would assume. But that is tough, because all those lots are small, correct? They're all the same width, and so you're going to have a tough build, and you don't want to get into where you limit any of the property owners. Boy, that's a tough one. You almost need a smaller house there, it looks like, but.
Mr. Chair? Cassie, could you go out to the elevation again and show that north line? Mike makes a good comment. Note there's only one window on that north elevation, so that if someone is occupying this structure and the neighbor next door then also builds and he has family in the backyard, there's not a lot of opportunity at a higher elevation to look down on the lot next door because he's only putting one window and it looks like it's over the garage. Those things matter too, because you're going to be sitting at a higher elevation. And if this were an elevation that had massive windows and a sliding glass door, that all shows impact on the adjacent property.
All right, Alicia?
Thank you. I do appreciate the idea that maybe there's a middle ground with the setback, like Eric mentioned. I also agree with Kelly that this overall square footage seems reasonable. I appreciate there's floor plans, and it seems like there might be a way to make it a little bit more efficient, and you could even take off 2 feet from the north side upstairs by putting the bathrooms back to back and sharing a water wall rather than having them separated or coming into the mezzanine a bit. So there might be a few ways in reducing the building from 30 wide to 28 wide. I think you could have a similar use of space inside. With the neighbor here, I don't necessarily think it's fair for us to give a 6-foot setback for a 2-story building and then require them to have if they wanted a similar footprint, they'd need 12 feet. And because they're to the north, they're gonna not get very much sun if this large building is to the south. So I think having a middle ground where the neighbor has the same opportunities as this applicant would make sense, whether it's splitting the middle with the setback or asking this house to shift or reducing the width. So I mainly think that this should exist and the square footage is fine, but I'd like the neighbor to the north to have the same opportunities as this person with the 2-story house.
Thanks, Alicia. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I really do think we could move that footprint south. You know, I know this looks like a narrow lot, but actually a 50-foot lot, it's not that bad. If you go to any housing development in Rapid City or Piedmont or Box Elder, they're on 50 and 60-foot lots. And the clearances between the buildings, this is typical, it's normal, it's not a big deal. But because it is 2-story, you know, I do agree that if we could scooch it south a couple of feet, maybe even 4 feet, I don't know. Van Buren is a dead-end street, it's not high traffic or high visibility, and the chances of it being developed through are pretty slim to none. So I'd be okay with bringing that to the south closer to Van Buren to give everybody a little more breathing room. The trees are a great buffer. They're you know, sight lines, it gives a little bit of separation. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know if you know, a 10-foot setback to the north would be appropriate or allowed, but that might be an option too, to give it some space.
All right. Timing is tough on this, and we're at the point where we're about ready to start designing from the dais, so to speak. And I'm going to ask this, is that something that the applicant wants? Or do you want time to consider the idea of moving the structure on the lot slightly to create more separation on that north side? Because I'm hearing that that's a desire.
I guess are they saying keep everything the way it is right now, the same size?
I guess I'll make it explicit. What I'm saying is, do you want us to act today and attempt to change the plan, or do you want to continue this for, you know, a chance to get it exactly what?
I guess for your mind.
I'd like to could you come up to the mic? I'm sorry.
I guess in a perfect world, in your mind, if you could keep the house exactly the way it is and shift.
Yeah,
the
I can do
footprint,
that. I can do
doesn't
that.
bother us
I
one
can
bit
do
if
that.
that's possible.
Okay.
I mean,
So
if we can
that would
still
be
keep everything exactly the same way it is, and then just move it where we put it, the footprint,
okay.
towards Van Buren.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicki.
so we have 20 feet to work with, whether it's 14 on the south side and 6 on the north. The neighbor would like to maintain that minimum of 8 foot. 12 is what actually would be required. If you split that 10 and 10, that would still provide that access off of Van Buren. The side loading garage is needed so that we didn't want anyone, not, if it faced Van Buren and with that reduced setback, then they're sticking out in the right-of-way. That's the whole intent why we wanted the side-loading garage. That might be a compromise. It sounds like it's something that the applicant would be okay with. Now it just kind of sits before the Zoning Board of Adjustment to see if that's something that you would be in line with. And so, if so, then the amendment to the motion would be to reduce the front and rear yard setbacks to 10 feet each, and then to allow a lot coverage of 33% instead of 30.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. Kelly?
Thank you. So if that's the case, then I would amend my recommendation to approve to allow an equal split, 10 to the north and 10 to the south setback, and the total lot cover, or the total building coverage would be 33% of the lot.
Vince, you were the second on that?
I'll agree. Second.
Okay. Kelly's motion has been amended for a 10-foot and 10-foot front and rear yard. Haven, comments?
Thank you. On our approval of this, one of the requirements would be a side-loading garage, which would be from the west. I guess my question is, what other provisions of the design that we're looking at in this photo are fixed with this way, or what could be changed? Vicki, you mentioned the issue if there were large windows and a deck on this north side. Is that something that they could do, or change the windows on the north side?
Vicki?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask Kinsley to chime in here too. You can approve a variance specific to the request that's set before you, but that variance goes with the property. If this home should burn down in the future, this variance is in place for another structure. Kinsley, could we add a stipulation that the structural elevations have to continue to match what was presented today before the Zoning Board of Adjustment?
Kinsley?
Yes, that's fine.
So that would be my recommendation, so that we do preserve that we don't have additional windows or second-story decks being proposed that would further encroach towards the neighbor to the north.
That would be on the north elevation.
Correct.
Kelly, I'll ask you, and Vince, if that is something you'd like to consider for your motion as well. Okay.
Second.
All right. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? The motion is now to approve this variance with the structure as currently designed, the setbacks being 10 foot on the north and 10 foot on the south, and the lot coverage being 33%. And the stipulation that the north elevation will remain as currently designed and presented. Any discussion on that further? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for the discussion. Appreciate it. Item number 3.
All right. Item number 3, this is your second variance request. This is a request to reduce the east side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet for a carport. This is a property located off of Willow Avenue. Current zoning of this property is low density residential 1. Future land use is low density neighborhood. Willow Avenue is classified as a local street. What they are proposing to do, this property is currently developed with a 912 square foot single-story dwelling. There is currently no garage structure on this property. What they are proposing to do is construct a 12-foot by 24-foot carport. Because of the location of the dwelling currently and the existing location of the driveway, this is the location that makes the most feasible sense for putting a carport. As you can see on this aerial photo, there is some space there in the rear yard. However, if they were to put this structure in the rear yard, there is a wood privacy fence that exists right here, along with a developed kind of patio area right here. So they would be looking at removing all of that stuff in order to extend their driveway and put the carport in the rear of the property. So that location of the existing dwelling and the existing driveway does create a circumstance that would allow for support of this variance. Strict application would require that this carport meet that required 8-foot side yard setback, which would reduce the width of this carport to 9 feet. And that is not wide enough to provide sufficient room to open car doors effectively. A standard carport size is this 12-foot wide. That's a standard width for a carport. So since there is currently no garage structure on this property, it does seem that this would be a reasonable request to construct this. Like I said, reducing that east side yard setback from 8 feet to 5 feet. That is also in harmony with, there are several other properties in this neighborhood that have carports of a similar size and of a similar setback. So it does seem to be in harmony with the neighborhood as well. The fire department did comment that they would like this carport to be constructed with non-combustible material, as with a 5-foot side yard setback, it will be approximately 10 feet or 12 feet from the structure on the neighboring property to the west. So because of that closeness, we do recommend that it be constructed with non-combustible material. So staff is overall recommending approval of this variance. Here is an example of what the carport will look like. This is a carport that is constructed within the neighborhood. They are proposing for theirs to look something similar to this. This is the property as it exists today. You can see over here, this is where that carport would be constructed. Here's that privacy fence that they would look at taking down. It is also important to note with this request, as you can see in this photo, the driveway of this property is currently gravel surfaced. Our code does require that the parking area, at least the first 50 feet or up to the parking pad, be of a paved surface. So with this request, the stipulation that is included with this variance does require that when the building permit comes in, the site plan show that that will be paved, at least for the first 50 feet or up to the parking pad. That's a little bit different angle of where that carport structure will be. This is Willow Avenue looking east, and this is Willow Avenue looking west. I will also point out that the neighbor directly to the west of this property does also have a carport similar to what they are proposing with this request. So staff is recommending approval of this variance with the criteria that carports are a permitted use in the low-density residential district. So this does not grant a land use otherwise excluded. The existing single-family dwelling and its location and the location of the existing driveway does create a special circumstance that supports approval of the variance. There is currently no garage structure on this property, so it does appear to be the minimum adjustment necessary for reasonable use. There does not appear to be any privacy concerns, as this would be constructed over the existing driveway where they are currently parking. And it does need to be constructed with non-combustible materials, and granting this does not appear to be injurious to the neighborhood. So staff does recommend approval with one stipulation included. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Eric Heikus.
I think this is very fitting of the neighborhood and character. I think is the minimum adjustment. I'm going to move approval. Save us some time, hopefully.
All right. Eric made the motion to approve this variance as presented. Is there a second to that? Mike Quasney seconded.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
just clarify that it is with the stipulation as noted by Cassie and citing criteria that it's minimal adjustment necessary for the use of this property.
think I heard Eric say that, and Mike agreed with that. Haven?
We have to assume that the neighbor to the east here has made no objection. At least there's nothing in the comments that we've received today. And this approval is for a carport. My question maybe is similar to the last application that was up here. What does that limit them to in the future? In other words, could they wall in all three walls of this carport in the future without any additional approval?
Vicki?
Mr. Chair, no, they could not without a building permit, and then it would come back to you as a variance again.
And so apparently carport is, there's a definition of carport that would support that sort of a structure?
Correct.
Vince?
Oh, thank you, Chair. No, actually, Haven already got my question answered. Thank you.
All right. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a really quick question for staff and Chip. Fire-treated wood, does that include all the framing as well? The columns, everything has to be fire-treated? Like structurally?
Chip?
That's correct.
Okay, so all the wood has to be non-combustible type. Okay.
And Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up, because, applicant might assume it has to be all metal or things like that, but the fire-treated composite wood would work.
Okay. All right, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4.
Good morning. Jennifer Bergstrom, Special Projects Planner. Item 24 VA 15 is your third variance request of the morning. This is a variance request to reduce the minimum parking requirement at the property at 807 St. Andrew Street. This is a commercial property that has operated as a dental clinic for many years. The property is now under contract and the applicants are the potential buyers. They plan to operate a group travel wholesale company at this location. This will be an internet-based business with no in-person customers. It will employ 2 full-time year-round employees and 2 full-time seasonal employees for a maximum of 4 employees at one time. The municipal code requires that when a new use is initiated, such as this change to a new business type, that the facility shall conform to the minimum off-street parking requirements. There is a legal non-conforming parking lot here to the rear of the business, accessed by the alleyway between St. Andrew Street and St. Patrick Street. There are currently 6 parking spaces in the lot, including 1 handicap space here. Neither the existing spaces nor the drive aisle meet the current sizing requirements, however. This property is located in the general commercial zoning district, and the proposed use is an allowable use in this district. This commercial use fits well within the area, and there are several other commercial businesses nearby along Mount Rushmore Road. The future land use plan designates this property as urban neighborhood. The frontage street, St. Andrew Street, is classified as a local street, and the nearby Mount Rushmore Road is shown as a principal arterial street on the major street plan. According to the proposed operations plan and floor plans, 9 off-street parking spaces are required. The applicant is proposing to provide 4 off-street parking spaces instead, including 1 handicap accessible space. The parking spaces and the drive aisle will meet the current sizing requirements. This is looking south at the front of the building from St. Andrew Street. This is a picture of that parking lot to the rear of the building, and there is no additional space on the lot to construct additional parking This is a picture looking north directly across the street, directly across St. Andrew Street, facing Wilson Park. There are 8 public parking spaces here adjacent to the park, including 1 handicap accessible space. This is looking west down St. Andrew Street, where on-street parking is also available. This on-street parking and the parking adjacent to the park in such close proximity to the business will offset the reduced parking capabilities of this lot. Due to the online nature of this business, this use will actually generate less parking needs than the dental clinic has in the past. Strict application of the parking provisions would severely limit the types of uses that could exist in this location, including most of the uses listed as permitted in the general commercial zoning district. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the variance request to reduce the minimum off-street parking requirement from 9 spaces to 4, with the stipulation that any change in use or operational plan for the travel company would require a new variance request be presented. This recommendation for approval is based partly upon the additional on-street parking that is available, as well as the reduced parking needs for an online-based business. And with that, I will stand for questions, and also the applicants are available in the audience here today.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
if I might add, we see this up and down Mount Rushmore Road, and we've had other variances over the years that we've had to bring to you as well. So a lot of these uses that are currently in place may be legal non-conforming, especially to parking. In order to ensure reasonable reuse of this commercial corridor, time and time again, we come to you to try to work through the parking issue. And so in order to ensure that we have a vital business and not a vacant building along Mount Rushmore Road, we've partnered well with the applicant, looking at their operational plan, and we do believe this is the minimum adjustment necessary in order to ensure reasonable use of the property continues.
Thank you. Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the past, we've had, this is a tour guide business, is that right?
It's a travel group wholesale company.
We've got a speaker request from the applicants if you'd like to hear from them, Mike.
Okay. I guess my question would be, how many vehicles do they have? Do they do tours? Do they have, because in the past we've had tour companies that have vehicles and the vehicles become a big problem.
Good morning.
Valerie and Megan?
Yep.
Okay.
May I?
Yeah.
We do not have any vehicles that actually park on site for the programming.
Do you
Does that
mind
answer your
explaining
question?
your business a little bit, just in a general sense?
Good morning, I'm Valerie Baker. This is my business partner, Megan Ragland. Yes, as Jennifer mentioned, we create educational travel programs for retired seniors, but we do it in a wholesale manner. We create these tours, we call them programs because they're educational. They're week-long, and we sell them to our business partner, Road Scholar, and they actually do all the marketing and the selling. So we never have a customer walk through our doors. We just do all of the contracting for the amenities, coaches, meals, that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, I think it's great that we put keep that corridor filled up with businesses, so I would make a motion to approve with all stipulations.
Could I interject one more
Please.
time real quick, please? So Jennifer, thank you. You did a great job with this proposal. What our original application was to keep the 6 parking spaces to not only, lessen the strain on the on-street parking, but also to allow business growth for us. If I understand correctly, if we're limited to 3 parking spots and handicapped, then per the square footage of the building, we may be limited to what we could designate as office space through there. So I hope I understand that right. So I guess we're really asking or proposing that is there a way that we could either keep the existing 6 that has worked for the past few years, or even compromise and maybe go down to 5. We just feel that the 4 is just impractical for the use of the square footage of that building.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
in order to do that, we would probably have to set aside this application and start over. That would be an entirely different set of notification. Typically, whenever we see these established properties and we're trying to bring back new uses, at a minimum, while we will support reducing the number of spaces, we do try then to meet minimum design standards for safety purposes of getting people in and out of these properties. And if you're like me, I've done business at some of these along Mount Rushmore Road, and you get in and then someone with an extended cab gets in beside you and it's even difficult to get out. This design protects that. The property is currently not striped for parking correctly. By striping it correctly, that is what reduces the number. And I don't know that you would see a staff recommendation to approve that. So if the applicant wants, though, to start from there, we would have to do a new variance application because it would be to reduce access aisle width, reduce the length of the parking spaces, etc.
Can I just ask, and maybe this is that for the applicant or you, Megan, you mentioned the utilizing office space in the building. Is this being proposed to not utilize part of the building as part of this, or I guess that one caught me by surprise.
Chair, if I could
Jennifer,
specify.
yeah.
So currently, this structure has a basement, a lower level, and an attic area. So when you look at the total square footage of the structure, they're using about 67% as office space. The rest is storage at this time.
Gotcha.
So that's important in the calculation of the parking.
Okay.
Pretty much that main level is what they're utilizing at this time.
So I think Vicki kind of posed the question that your applicants have to answer. Do you want to submit a variance to redesign or have the parking not be per code, or do you want us to continue with the variance as presented?
Mr. Chair?
I'm gonna Karen just gave me a good idea. Since it's separate variances, we could act on this today to provide the 4 spaces plus is it 4 plus the ADA, or, but?
That includes the ADA.
Okay, we could act on this as presented, and if they decide they want to put in another variance for other parking, they could submit that?
That is true. And Mr. Chair, just to clarify for the applicants, so the parking that is required is not because of the number of employees, it's the square footage of office space. So if their business was growing and they needed to bring in additional staff, and it worked within the established area on the site plan that they're showing as offices, that wouldn't require any additional parking and trigger another variance. But I do like the idea that if this gets acted on today, and then you decide that instead of redesigning it this way, you want to go back and ask for the existing design to be allowed, then we'd work with you on the language of that. It would have to be to reduce the width, the length, the access aisle, and that advertisement would have to be specific to what the requirement is versus what you're actually providing. So the chair is asking you, can they act on this one today? That gives you the right to proceed, and you would just have the 4 spaces. And then in the meantime, as you're working through your operational plan, you could come back in with a new variance and say, we want more spaces, we just want reduction in design of the required parking spaces and access aisle.
May I ask another question real quick before we make that decision? Sure. If you look in the aerial photo, our parking lot versus the one directly to the east that abuts Mount Rushmore Road, they actually have 5 spots total, one of which is an ADA. Would that also require, I think would that also require a brand new variance request from us if we were to do something like that?
The hard part is we don't know what their measurements are.
Okay.
It's unfortunate, but
Okay, then we'll go ahead with the variance as submitted today.
okay.
Thank you.
Mike, I left your mic on, but we kind of interrupted you if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Mike Quasney made the motion to approve a variance reducing the minimum parking requirement from 9 spaces to 4 spaces to utilize the existing parking lot. And I apologize, Vicky, or Jennifer, the criteria for that suggested.
This would be the minimum adjustment necessary to ensure reasonable reuse of the property.
Does that work for you, Mike?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to Mike's motion? Karen seconded the motion. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
Good morning, Chair, Board. Jessica Olson with Community Development. This is a proposal for a variance to increase the fence height from 4 feet to 6 feet in a front yard. I will note, and this property is at 4601 Mount Rushmore Road. It does front that service road that's right off of Mount Rushmore Road as Tower Road turns into that. Oops, let's go back. I will note the front yard, just to clarify, so the front along Mount Rushmore Road side as well as Highwood Road, the side yards that abut right-of-way also have to meet the front yard setbacks, and so that's why it's just to a front yard setback. We are in a general agricultural district. The property is currently developed with a church. There is an associated school, elementary school, and they do have a gymnasium on site as well. All of the uses there are currently permitted. They use sorry to keep flipping back and forth, the south side of the property as a recreational fields. There is a play area as in this area, and as well as there's some play equipment in this, and then there's soccer fields, and there's a baseball backstop in the corner here. So this area is actually used for recreational use currently, and they do have some soccer goals that they move around, and the existing backstop that is a permanent structure. The future land use here is employment as well. Like I said, we're fronting Mount Rushmore Road here, which is principal arterial. The service road turns into Tower Road to the north, which is a collector street. And then that Highland Road to the south there is a future collector, but it is not improved. The variance to the reduction or the increase of the fence height from 4 to 6 would be along the property lines. There is an existing 4-foot fence here along the front. They're asking to increase the height to improve safety, for the children that are playing in those fields. This is a unique circumstance. They can't really locate that field area in a different area. If they did use the required 35-foot setback here, and then this would actually be a 10-foot that would be required on the side that is using the front setback. There's a reduction in the code that they could do it up to 10 feet. That impacts the recreational facilities that they have on site. So it would be reduced to the point where they could potentially not use that area anymore for those recreational activities for the children at the school. The proposed fence would be 6 feet tall, material chain link. They're potentially having a drive gate on that south side, which is around here. So this is the existing 4-foot fence that abuts the property line here. It does kind of continue past this sign along the parking area for, again, safety for that play area and that play field. This is the backstop that I noted. If the setbacks were increased, they would have to, that would be outside of the area as well, so reducing that play field if applied. This is, and again, here we're looking northwest at the property. And again, all of the field areas are in the front. The church itself is kind of set back a bit. There's no area behind that would be able to be used additionally for this purpose. Oops, wrong way. We are looking up Highland here. This is just the extent of the play area, and this is where the fence, the other fence would be installed, the 6-foot as well. Here we're looking kind of northeast at Mount Rushmore Road. There are a number of churches in the area as well. This is, again, unique as the school is on this property and it's in the area already where they can't move the play fields. And so it's a little different than the other churches. If the other churches were to come in for a similar one, it wouldn't have that same circumstance. This is looking south. Again, another church, and then you've got those apartments that have been going in to the south there. There's a lot of open space around this as well, so not to negate, this is in the west side of the property, so not a lot of impacts to the neighboring properties if approving this variance. And this is, again, that front fence line on the service road, Mount Rushmore Road. It is kind of set back from Mount Rushmore, but there are quite a bit of people that use the service road. The speeds on Mount Rushmore Road itself are pretty high, and so to have that safety factor for the children that are utilizing the playfields is important. So staff recommends approval of this variance with a stipulation that the fence shall remain chain link. There is a sight triangle right here where I'm standing, so there cannot be any really opaque. It has to be at least 30% opaque, so that's, just counting the visibility through that. So they wouldn't be able to put slats in here, and that's kind of what that stipulation guarantees as well. So it would have to remain the chain link see-through fence. Thank you, and I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Mike Kwasny?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we need to put a stipulation in that they don't put signage on that fence near the site triangle? Because I could see a school or church wanting to advertise a feed or something to that effect, which would then affect the site triangle. Is that something that we can put in, or?
Mr. Chair, to put a sign on that fence would require a sign permit, and it doesn't set back far enough from the property line to secure a sign permit. So, you could, but I don't know that it would be needed.
Okay. I like the idea of a 6-foot fence for the kids, and the fact that it's chain link, it would not cause, I don't think, a problem. So I would make a motion to approve.
With that stipulation that the fence is chain link?
Yes, definitely chain link.
And do we want to, this is a unique circumstance and the minimum adjustment necessary.
Exactly what you said.
Thank you.
All right. Mike Kwasny made the motion, and Karen seconded that motion to approve the variance request for the reasons stated, with the stipulation stated. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That's our last item on Zoning Board of Adjustment. So I'd look for a motion to adjourn Zoning Board.
Motion to adjourn Zoning Board of Adjustment.
All right. Is there a second? Mike seconded that. I heard him. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. All right. We will now commence the Planning Commission meeting for November 7th, 2024. Again, if anybody wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, please grab a speaker request form, fill it out, and hand it to the staff seated over here so we can recognize you on the item you wish to speak to. Items 1 through 5 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision. Are there any items 1 through 5 that staff would like removed from the consent calendar?
No, thank you.
Any items 1 through 5 that any planning commissioner would like removed from the consent calendar? And any items 1 through 5 that any audience member would like removed from the consent calendar for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 5 in accordance with staff's recommendations.
Motion to approve items 1 through 5 in accordance with the staff's stipulations.
All right, is there a second to Vince's motion? Alicia seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
All right, item number 6 before you, this is a final plan development overlay application to allow an apartment complex. This is the Creekside Heights Apartments property located south of Jaffa Garden Way and west of Jim Street. Currently zoned medium-density residential district with a plan development overlay. Future land use here is employment. And this is directly to the east of Elkvale Road, which is classified as a principal arterial street. Both Jaffa Garden Way and Jim Street, where this property takes access from, they are classified as local streets. What they are proposing here is phases 3 and 4 of the Creekside Heights apartment development. This was originally approved as a final or as a plan development overlay and has since gone through a final plan development for phase 1 and also phase 2. Parts of phase 2 are still under construction. Phase 1 is complete. So this would be phases 3 and 4, which would finish up the project. The entire property is 14.78 acres, and there is one of the apartment buildings that was developed in phase 2, and then also the clubhouse, that was developed in phase 1 that are on this property currently, but the part of the property that will be for phases 3 and 4 is 11.11 acres. What they are proposing with phases 3 and 4 are 7 additional apartment buildings that will provide 300 additional dwelling units. Phase 1 of this provided the leasing office and the clubhouse, and then 4 apartment buildings that were 168 dwelling units altogether. Phase 2 provided 3 more apartment buildings for another 177 dwelling units. This was approved originally to allow 14 total apartment buildings and a total of 659 dwelling units for all 4 phases of this, which they are still in compliance with. They are not exceeding any of that. With this request, they are asking for one exception with this final plan development overlay, and that exception is to reduce the required setback on the west property line that abuts Elkvale Road from 25 feet to 23 feet 6 inches, and that would be for building 11 only. So you can see this is the full site plan. That's where these buildings would lie. There's 4 buildings up top here, 1 building here in the middle, and then 2 buildings down here towards the bottom. This gives you a little bit closer view of building number 11 and Elkvale Road. So the reason for this exception request is that the building does not sit completely parallel to Elkvale Road. It's tilted just slightly. And in order to maintain the 25-foot setback to Jaffa Garden Way for building number 12, and then allow the appropriate parking between buildings 11 and 12, building number 11 ends up being just slightly closer to the west property line. So the southwest corner of that will be about 23.5 feet from the property line, and the northwest corner will be about 24.5 feet. So they're asking for that exception to reduce that for building 11 only. All of the other structures on the property do meet that minimum setback requirement. Neither the Department of Transportation or Rapid City Engineering has a concern with that reduced setback. It does seem like it is appropriate for that building only. It does also allow, with that adjustment, there will still be about 80 feet from the actual paved driving lanes of Elkvale Road to that building. So there still is sufficient buffer there. You're not right up to the paved surface of Elkvale Road. So this is, like I said, 7 apartment buildings. 3 of these apartment buildings are 59-unit buildings. 3 of them are 32-unit buildings, and 1 of them is a 27-unit building. I do want to note that these buildings also do provide some garage parking on the lower floor. This is the 27-unit building that you're looking at right here. As you can see, the bottom, it has in the 27-unit building, there are 8 garages in that building, 1 of which is an ADA garage. This that you're looking at is the 32-unit building. Again, you can see the garages on the lower level. Each of those 32-unit buildings provides 11 garage spaces, 1 of which in each building is an ADA garage. And then this is the 59-unit buildings. Elevations, you can see garages on the bottom as well. Each of the 59-unit buildings provides 19 garage spaces. 1 in each is also an ADA parking space as well. In terms of landscaping, open space, and parking, this does meet all of those requirements. For open space, this is the entire open space plan for the full development. Phases 3 and 4 alone do provide enough open space to meet the requirement for those phases by themselves, and then they also do have additional access to the open spaces of phases 2 and 1 as well. And that clubhouse that is was developed as part of phase 1, that does provide amenities that are accessible to tenants on the entire property, and that includes a fitness room, a community center, a theater room, and a pool. I do want to point out that there is a property located kind of in the center of this. Let me go back right here. There's a property located right here in the middle of this. That property is currently accessed via a temporary access easement that was filed with the Register of Deeds in 2021. There is verbiage in that access easement that says that it shall be effective from the date of signing to the final phase of Creekside Heights or until alternate access is provided. This is the final phase of Creekside Heights, and they are providing access to this property. So the access that is currently there will not exist. That access will go away, but there is alternate access to this property being provided to the south of Building 11 here, as you can see. So this property will not become landlocked or inaccessible. I thought that was important to point out. So let me get you a few site pictures here. Landscaping also meets all of the requirements. So this is a verification that public notification has been posted. This is on Jaffa Garden Way. This is south from Jaffa Garden Way. As you can see, this is phase 2 of the development, those apartments that have already gone up. This is southeast from Jaffa Garden Way. Southwest from Jaffa Garden Way, that property that I was talking about kind of sits here in behind these trees. This is Jaffa Garden Way looking east, currently fully developed as a cul-de-sac street. This is looking north near Jim Street. This is the phase that is currently under construction, as you can see. And this is looking northeast near Jim Street. This is the corner of that pool of the clubhouse that you can see in there. So staff is recommending approval of this final plan development to allow phases 3 and 4 of this apartment complex with the stipulations noted in the staff report. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. I'm assuming this is a easy question to answer, but the setback on Building 11 where it looked like there was a drainage element in between there, reducing the setback doesn't have any effect on building that, does it?
Todd says no.
That's all I need to know. Haven?
I recall this being before us, it's been quite a while ago, and one of the issues, it's not clear to me, what is the access, for example, to Phase 3? Apparently, it's not off Jaffa Way, but there must be some interior access that I'm not seeing on the diagram here.
Let me get back to the site plan here.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, Vicki?
Haven has a wonderful memory. In an earlier phase of this, we did get some concern with the neighbors along Jim Street that all the traffic coming into the first few phases was going to be up and down Jim Street. So as a part of a previous phase, you as the Planning Commission required the applicant to make that connection to Java. And so there's a through connection right now that will be preserved so that we ensure we have two ways in and out of this project. It's a great memory, Haven.
Can you follow it through there?
I think I do follow that. So
Okay.
there apparently then is interior access here that would go all the way from Jim Street all the way up to Jaffa Garden Way.
That's the way it looked to me. But
That is
Vicki?
correct, Haven.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this final plan development overlay? Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a clarification from me, because I don't remember all the things we discussed into the initial. I know this is a low spot, and there's, I'm guessing, floodplain to the east somewhere. And I just wanted to make sure that that there is no drainage issues because of how low that property is, just for my own mind.
I think that's you, Todd.
Yeah, there is floodplain to the east. Basically, the floodplain follows the east property line. That's why that property line is shaped the way it is. All the drainage is on the east side of this property.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone with a motion or other comments?
I'll make a motion.
All right, Karen?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve this item with the stipulations as stated.
All right, Karen made the motion and Haven seconded her motion to approve item 6 with the stipulations listed. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Computer is a little slower than the screen. Apologize. Good morning, Mike Dugan with Finance. This morning, I have a few slides to discuss the amendment number 1 to the project plan for TID number 83, which is the Homestead Street extension. There we go. Apologize. This is a map of the current active TIDs within the city limits of Rapid City. There are currently 16 active TIDs. TID number 83 would be to your far left, next to the big green TID number 84. The original approval for this tax increment district was for 900 feet of Homestead Street extension between Missoula Street and Timmins Boulevard. And this was originally approved in October of 2020. This is the boundary and major street plan. The boundary in the yellow, as you can see, between Timmins and Missoula, Homestead Street was put in that extension. And then to your right, or to your left, the major street plan, Homestead Street is identified as a collector. And to the west, just outside of the TID boundary, is Elkvale Road, which is a principal arterial. The zoning, this is a mix of medium density residential, office commercial, and general commercial. And then there's a pic there of the aerial. What this amendment will be is a 35% increase to the project plan costs. It would go from the 2.7 million to approximately 3.6 million, which is an increase of approximately $951,000. And then this TID was certified in January of 2023, so it is in repayment right now. There was leftover funds, unused funds that were not used for this project. So those funds will come from the public improvements section, and other development costs will be reallocated to this amendment, which will total an additional $835,000. So what those funds will be used, so the sources with the increase, the reallocated costs, are the total sources of just over $1.7 million. What this funds will be used for is to purchase of 3 lots within this development, which would be the red lot up top along the intersection of Homestead Street and Neal Street, and then down the 2 green lots along Neal Street. Those total purchase price of those 3 lots is $1,185,000. And what those lots will be used for future use, the red lot there will be for a future fire station. And then within that fire station, it is proposed a small office space for police. And the 2 green lots to the south of the future fire station and police station would be for a city park. And then the county fee, $15,000 application professional fee. And then the additional funds of approximately $585,000 will be left, will go to the city park improvements. That'll be a start to that, and those funds will have to be used by October of 2025, as all these funds have to be used up in the 5-year period. So the lot purchase breakdown, the lot 1 block 3 in red is $600,000. Lot 2 block 3 is $280,000, and the lot 3 block 3, the 2 green ones, is $305,000. These were appraised in April of this year. The lot 2 block 3 and the lot 3 block 3, which would be the 2 lots in green. The purchase price was taken from the appraisal. The lot 1 block 3 appraised for $563,000, which is the lot in red. There was a recent sale of a lot across the street from this one that sold for $730 per square foot. So the applicant wanted closer to that $730 per square foot, which would put it over the appraised price. So it was negotiated to meet it at $600,000, which would be approximately $6.92 per square foot. This shows the current and future development. The current development, this is just within the TID boundaries since it was created in 2020. So there's been 59 single-family homes, 170 multifamily units, and 7,000 square feet of retail space. And this is the estimated future development that's within the TID boundary that's left. As you can see, there is still quite a bit that can be built within this boundary that would increase the payback time of this current amendment. So the city is proposing, the city will be a co-applicant with the current developer for the purchase of these 3 lots. So the city is proposing paying off the current TID loan held at an outside financial institution by the applicant of just over $711,000. Combine it with the 35% increase in the reallocated funds for a total loan of just over $2.4 million, and then financing that at an interest rate of 7% fixed. So this is the updated amortization. So this TID is actually overperforming than the original estimation. And the original estimation had this paying off in 2032. Even with the increase in project costs, this tax increment district is estimated to pay off in 2029. And as you can see, just over $532,000, that'll go back to the city, as the city will financing that. So any interest costs that come from the repayment of this loan will come back to the city. And last slide here, the Rapid City TIF policy, the project costs. These are allowable project costs. So item number 6 in bold, the public playgrounds, parks, and recreational improvements to be owned by the city of Rapid City is allowable. And number 12, the costs at the discretion of the governing body, which can be approved by city council, it's allowable for the land purchase. And the idea with the purchase of these 3 lots, in the future, you'll be seeing either an exact overlay, and another tax increment district coming before you, the exact overlay to pay for, it would finish out the balance of what that city park would cost, and to help with the cost of the future fire station. It won't completely cover the cost of the fire station, but it'll be a pretty good start. So that'll either be the exact overlay, or if we can identify some future areas of growth with outside, the TID might be adjusted a little bit. But since this one is overperforming and paying off in approximately 5 years or less, and then with the expected growth, this previous slide, the expected growth would be a pretty good start to finish off the resting remaining balance of that park, and to start on the future fire station. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Eric Heikus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just out of curiosity, how does the park amount work? Is that funding that is given to Parks Department for operation and establishment, or is it a set aside?
Oh, as far as the reallocated costs?
Correct, yeah.
That'll be set aside for just development of that park.
Okay. Is there any consideration to the increased operation cost of this facility then for parks in the long term? Excuse my blunt question.
No, you're fine. No,
Mr. Chair?
not within this TID.
Yeah, that's a great comment, and I think that the Director of Parks and Rec would really appreciate it. For the scope of what we're looking at, though, it's just capturing that additional increment that's going to provide monies. This will probably, for the most part, go into some design and hopefully some initial equipment or parking lot design and placement. But because of that time crunch of getting it done within that time-year frame, we're just limited, and we have to spend it within that time frame.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Chair. Is that 7% interest rate locked in, or is it waiverable or adjustable, I should say?
It would be 7% fixed.
Okay.
There'd be no adjustment period.
All right.
So I'm going to hop in here. If I'm understanding this, the city, this currently in Homestead Street LLC is currently the developer on this project with holding the loan. The city would be becoming the holder of the tax increment financing.
Correct. So paying off that loan and becoming co-developer allows us then that we would collect the increment, would go back, so we could collect that to pay down this.
I guess I'm just wondering, is Homestead Street LLC involved anymore if this is approved, or are they?
They will still, yep, no, they'll still be,
released, or
no,
however
they'll
you
still
wanna
be
say it?
on, involved as co-developer for this
Okay.
district until it's paid in full.
Okay. The borrowing then, the future borrowing, is that the city borrowing from themselves or the city bonding? And I guess how does that part work?
For the fire station part, the future?
No, once the current loan is paid off, the new loan proposed, is that from a bank? Is that from?
That'll be city funds, and so there is, I think, anywhere on average between 200 and 220 million that's invested, that incur investments, like, for example, CDs, or, right? So when those mature, the city can reallocate, instead of reinvesting those back into a CD at 3% or 4%, that can be reallocated as a loan at the 7% to use for these improvements.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
If I might, you know, for many years, we've looked at the TIFs requests that we have coming in, and the developers are requesting assistance in some of those public improvements that really go towards streets, utilities, drainage, etc. But the other part of the infrastructure that isn't captured in these TIFs, park area, fire and police areas, this is an example of what we hope we will see more of as we anticipate TIFs will continue, is that when there is the money available so that we can take advantage of that increment 2, and then this isn't something that's having to come out of our CIP budget or our general fund budget, and we can get some of these amenities in order to serve the needs of these neighborhoods, especially these, such as this one, that is significantly distanced from our downtown core and any other parks or other amenities. I do want to point out that Chief Culberson is in the audience today with Dexter, and I appreciate his support because this is very important to both the police department and the fire department. It helps us take a huge step forward in meeting our growing needs on the east side of town.
Totally agree. I just like to, first time I see something like this, I like to know how it's coming together. And people have been clamoring for a park out there for a long time, and I'm happy to see that. Can I just, my question on both the park and the fire station is, you know, the timeline of the tax increment financing. Are we ready to go? Because this additional money has to be put in place relatively quickly.
For the most part, for them, it will purchase the lot, which would be held in reserve. I don't know that there's any money set aside for structural development of a fire station.
Okay.
That's really going into the park increment of it.
And that would be the overlapping TID that you'll probably see in the first quarter of next year, working out the schematics and the funding sources for that.
So it's just the 584 and
Yep,
change
that would
that
just
has to be
that
put
would
in
be,
place.
and as Director Fisher had noted, that would be more of the engineering, you know, kind of the design will be a lot of those funds.
Okay. Kinsley? Was it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to the loan component option, that will be something that will be an item on City Council's agenda for the future, for City Council to actually look at the approval of a loan to pay off the remaining obligation and kind of make some determination of where people are standing with the co-developer relationship.
I appreciate that. That kind of reminded me of my last question, I hope. We always say on a traditional TIF that the developer is taking the risk. They're the ones that are signing for the loan. In this relationship, is the city the guarantor, or does the developer still have a responsibility?
For the loan portion, the developer would be separated. It'd be the city.
Okay. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are all good questions. We had a lot of questions at the TIF meeting also, and so that was a good discussion. I agree with Vicki, and that was one thing that we we're so anxious to see is the parks and the fire and police having that capability out in that area. So I think this is a good TIF amendment that we have come forward, and so I approve the changes and stuff. So just wanted to add that to it too. Thanks.
All right, any other questions for staff on this? Comments?
I'll move approval of the item
All right.
as stipulated.
Second.
Karen made the motion to approve Amendment 1 to the project plan for TID number 83, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, any staff or planning commission items today, Vicky? Anything from the commission? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
All right, Vince made the motion. Mike, Mike Gallagher seconded. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.